Seriously, at the start of the season, if you had told me the Los Angeles Clippers were actually going to be 11-8 through 19 games, I would have said you are absolutely crazy. If you had told me that someday there was going to be a NBA owner who had more money than God and was certainly willing to spend $2 billion on it to still be the ugly stepchild of the Los Angeles Lakers, I would have called you crazy as well. But Steve Ballmer has done it. He's opened up the Intuit Dome. There's some sort of wall in the arena. It apparently has more bathrooms and concession stands than any place else that has ever been built in the history of mankind, if you listen to some of the PR reports out of the Clipper organization. Look, this Clipper team has been playing extremely well. They're currently in the 6th spot in the Western Conference. And I have to say, I often say, coaching really does matter in the NBA. We are going to talk about the Los Angeles Clippers, the addition of Jeff Van Gundy as an assistant coach to this team, what Norman Powell has been doing to this point. I would say he is one of the most, if not the most improved player in the NBA, and I have the stats to back that up. Welcome to the NBA Rundown. Hey, new to the channel, please go ahead and subscribe, and of course like this video, and also check out our audio version on Spotify, Apple, and wherever the hell else you get your podcasts. All right. So a lot of places we can start, and we are also going to talk about James Harden. I thought, though, we would start with Norman Powell, then we'll get into a little bit of what it means to have Jeff Van Gundy on this team. We'll talk about the additions to this team and how some of the other players are actually playing at this point. Now, I do want to quickly point out that they did lose to the cheat code last night in Boston in one Kristaps Porzingis as he made his return to the Celtics. Look, that's just not a fair fight at this point, assuming all of those Celtics are healthy. That is a tough out for any team in the association. Now, in terms of Norman Powell, this is a guy who historically throughout his career has essentially been a 6-man. Norman Powell has also pretty much averaged around 13 points a game throughout his career and has shot around 39% from the three-point arc. He is averaging now close to 24 points a game, being inserted into the starting lineup, shooting nearly 48% from the three-point arc. Well, I want to repeat, Norman Powell, almost 24 points a game, shooting nearly 48% from the three-point arc. Show me another player from a statistical standpoint that has improved as much as Norman Powell has from one year to another. You probably can't, maybe outside of a Jaden Ivey, and I don't even think his stats actually would match up to what Norman Powell has at least done through 19 games of this season at this point. So I think that certainly has been a key factor. Remember, no Kawhi Leonard so far. We're not even sure when the Clippers are even going to start talking about Kawhi Leonard coming back again. We're not even sure Kawhi Leonard's going to be back at all this season. At the end of the day, Norman Powell has been a fantastic savior, if you will, of this Clipper organization. Now, James Harden is, as we all know, one of the greatest players in the history of the association, definitely in the top 100, right? And James Harden has been, as we know, skiing down the backside of Career Mountain for quite some time. Now, currently, he's averaging around 20 points a game. And we know that James Harden will still have the occasional flashbacks to his days in Houston and score significantly more than that average. But what James Harden is doing is what some of the other great basketball players in the history of this game have done as they've started to ski down the backside of Career Mountain. They've shifted focus to other areas of their game. I'm not going to sit here and say that James Harden is listening to everything Jeff Van Gundy is preaching to him about defense at this point. The big difference for James Harden is historically throughout his career, he's averaged around 5 assists per game. James Harden this season is averaging just under 9 assists per game, which has been a huge difference in how this Los Angeles Clipper team has functioned on the offensive side of the ball. So it's not just Harden looking for his own shot anymore, but it's actually James Harden at this stage of his career acting like a true point guard for this Los Angeles Clipper team. I want to talk about some of the other players in just a second, but I thought this was a good segue into good coaching absolutely matters in the NBA. And it is often overlooked. Now, we know that Ty Lui is one of the great young coaches in the association and certainly is one of those coaches where you just give him 15 players and he'll figure it out. They'll be on the verge of making the playoffs almost every year, regardless of who those players are. He's that kind of coach. Look, Ty Lui could be the coach of the Utah Jazz, and he would probably have Danny Ainge pretty pissed off because he'd have more wins than Danny Ainge wants the Utah Jazz to actually have. But the addition this offseason of Jeff Van Gundy as their new head assistant coach was actually a surprising one. When I heard this went down, I was like, what the hell is Jeff Van Gundy doing? Why does he want back into the madness that is the association? But at the end of the day, what Jeff Van Gundy has done is he's actually brought defense back to the Los Angeles Clippers for the first time in a long time. This Clipper team, with Jeff Van Gundy leading the defensive side of it, has been playing significantly better. Now, there's a handful of household names on this team, but beyond that, it's a bunch of players that you probably don't know or probably wouldn't recognize if they walked in front of you at your local Target. Sure, you'd say that person's tall, but you wouldn't say, hey, that person plays for the Clippers. Now, Zubac, who was once a Los Angeles Laker, is of course been with the Clippers for quite some time, brings good contractual value as well. He's averaging 12 assists, or 12.5 rebounds per game and like 15 points per game. And he's a nice, if you will, third scoring option on this Clipper team. Now, there's several other players worth mentioning who have played extremely well at this point. Now, Derrick Jones Jr. was a free agency signing by the Clippers during the offseason. He's played really nicely, averaging over 10 points a game. Amar Coffey is playing really well. I thought Chris Dunn was a good move as well. And, of course, Terrence Mann, who is always a good body to have as well on this team. Not necessarily going to score a ton of points for you, but is certainly going to be a nice addition from a big body perspective. But I thought the big offseason move outside of Derrick Jones Jr. was actually getting the reclamation project of one Kevin Porter Jr. Kevin Porter Jr., as we all know, was was basically out of the league for quite some time. Now allowed back in the league by Adam Silver. He's currently playing around 19 minutes per game, currently averaging just under 9 points per game. Assuming Kevin Porter Jr. gets back to the Houston version of Kevin Porter Jr., you're going to be looking at a player down the road, once he gets his legs underneath him, that is going to be able to score between 15 and 20 points per game for you. If you're a Clipper fan, that will happen at some point later in the season. You'll see Kevin Porter Jr. explode for over 30 in at least a couple games, I'm sure of it. It was an excellent addition to this roster, and one that certainly a lot of people didn't pay any attention to. So at the start of the season, I certainly did not see this Los Angeles Clipper team being as good as they are. I mean, if you had asked me, I would have said, well, it's the Thunder, it's the Mavericks, it's the Timberwolves, it's the Rockets, It's the Grizzlies, it's the Lakers, and then, eventually I would have gotten to the Los Angeles Lakers probably after talking about Wemby improving during his sophomore year. I certainly did not think this Clipper team would be where they're at 19 games into the season without Kawhi Leonard on the team. Good coaching matters in the association. And at least through the first 19 games of the season, that is exactly what we are seeing to this point. All right, so those are some thoughts on the Los Angeles Clippers. I'd love to know what your thoughts and opinions are. Please go ahead and drop those in for the NBA Rundown. I'm Dave DeBaugh, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing day.
This is Phoenix.